Here we go. So tonight's presentation is called Mazzaroth, Crouching Lion and the Risen Lion, the Lion of the tribe of Yahudah, a sign of the King of Righteousness. So over these last couple weeks, as I was gearing up for this, I was going to start like most everybody else does with Bethula or Virgo, because that's where a lot of people start from. But because we were in this time of the year, coming out of Sukkot, coming out of the feast season, he had really kind of laid it in my heart for the first couple of things that we were talking was just to try and make sure that I defined things, left definitions, made it easy for people to look these definitions up, et cetera, et cetera. And he kept putting me here, you know, looking at the lion, looking at the lion, looking at the lion. And so there had been several times over some weeks now, we had talked about the lion of the tribe of Judah and how it's difficult through the scriptures to tie the lineage of Yahushua, because we have some characters that might be missing. It might be how we're reading the scriptures from like First and Second Chronicles and moving through Kings and a couple of other places. And so as I was praying about it, you know, he was showing me, of course, the heavens. And he's like, you know, I felt like he was telling me in my spirit that, you know, the heavens declare who I am. You don't have to see anything else. Just look up to me. And of course, I was like, yes, Father, but what about witnesses? You know, we're always told, you know, have two or more witnesses. And he's like, I've given you a witness. I've given you the witness of the heavens. I've given you the witness of my son. And I've given you the witness of the Ruach HaKodesh inside of you, to be a witness inside of you. So tonight, I was going to go into some of that. And as we were talking about, before some of y'all came on, they've done, and last week, they've done a real good job of changing some of the constellations. Here's an example of changing the constellations right here. So in Hebrew, where we see in the zodiac Leo, and that comes from a Latin translation. But in Hebrew, it's Audiyah. It'll say Audiyah, but I'm a advocate for the Aleph being an Aleph and not being an E. And so it's Audiyah. I think there's a lot just right there looking at Audiyah in and of itself about the lion. This is the young lion, and then Labaoth, or the old lion. So when you look at the heavens now, or you look at a lot of zodiac maps or constellations, and you study anything to do with the astronomy, you're going to see that they have two lions, and they're going to have the Leo major and the Leo minor. Well, from ancient times, there wasn't two lions. There was only one. 1687, 1688, there was a man who added this little lion into the heavens. This was not a part of the heavens. And this is something about what I was talking about, how they changed some of the constellations. And it's really important for us to understand that when we read something like the revelation that was given to John concerning Yahushua HaMashiach, that it was given in a sense that this was Yahushua's vision that was given to him. John partook of it through a messenger who brought it to him, as it says in Revelation 1:1, and showed it to him. But it was Yahushua who was given this vision. And I've already come to the point and tried to stress that you could take the book of Revelation and put it in front of Genesis, Bereshit. It's going to be a vision from the very beginning. And as we go through these months of these teachings, eventually I'm going to get to, or these studies, I'm going to get to Draco, or the serpent in the sky, and be able to show where at one time, instead of the North Star being what it is now, the North Star was actually in Draco, and at one time Draco was the center of the stars. And we'll be able to show that through the Stellarium program at one point. Now, of course, that's going back using Stellarium, and we can't be 100% sure about things. But I think that last year in September, with the sign that we had coming from Virgo or Bethula, that we were able to see that this was something that hadn't been seen in almost 2,000 years. Some people had said that it was when we saw Jupiter coming out of Virgo, but it hadn't, because what hadn't been seen was Jupiter retrograding back and forth between Leo and Virgo, or Arya and Bethula, going back and forth. And that hadn't been seen. And there's a little bit more I'm going to show tonight, going back 9 months prior to that, which kind of made it a very special thing. And I think it was given to us for the very sole purpose of building up the faith of us believers, especially as we near what I believe and others believe are these last days. I think if anybody was listening to T4 this last Shabbat, Matthew was really bringing out some great stuff through Ezekiel there. Really, these last 2 weeks, getting to the end time events, coming to the Mashiach Maged, or what they call the Antichrist. And I think that is already happening. I don't think it's just one individual, though I think there will be. I think it's an ongoing spirit that's being passed along through these years as it teaches us in the New Testament. So the reason I brought up these two right here is not to say that these two are Leo Major and Leo Minor, but how they had added this into here. Now Scripture teaches us not to add nor take away from the Scripture. Well, that goes for the heavens too. It's not to be added or taken away, because Psalm 19, Psalm 147, these teach us what Abba Yah did and how he decorated the heavens and how he brought them out like a tent. And he brought the stars out and he named the stars. And he gave them their places and their ordinances, including the sun and the moon. And there's not going to be any way for any of the principalities to change those things unless they're working, I believe, through us. And I believe there might be a little bit of work that might be done through the heavens, but it's going to be something the Father's allowing. So as we start with Genesis 49:8, we have prophetic word being spoken by Jacob concerning his sons. And I'm going to start here with Yahudah, Judah. You, Yahudah, your brothers praise you. Your hand is on the neck of your enemies. Your father's children bow down before you. Yahudah is a lion's cub. From the prey you have gone up, my son. He bowed down. He crouched like a lion, and like an old lion, who does rouse him? So we know, those of us who are in the faith, that this is speaking, of course, about the banner that was carried by Yahudah, or by Judah. Now, Judah carried that as a kingly tribe, and they were stationed on the east of the tabernacle when Moses came from the mountain and saw all that he saw in the heavens. And they were placed at the rising of the sun, as the Scripture teaches us that, you know, the Son of Righteousness, he does rise with the healing in his wings. Psalm 19 teaches us about the sun coming out and takes and moves that toward being the idea of the bridegroom. So it's all prophetic, all of it, and what it is. So I was breaking down a little bit here in Bereshit, or Genesis, Yahudah, and the meanings behind Yahudah. So Yahudah, behold the hand, joined, entering worship. You're going to see when you do some studies on this, they're going to have very generic translations for Judah. They're going to say like praise or celebrated. But really, if you break it down and you use the Hebrew letters, you're going to actually get a little bit more meaning out of what's going on inside each of these words. So Yahudah can be translated as behold the hand. You see that in Yah. We see those kind of things. We see that when we say Yahuwah. Behold the hand, joined, this joined, entering into worship. And so through the door, we behold, or we lift our hands up and we praise and we give worship. So behold the hand, joined, entering worship. Arya the lion, abiding in the lair, on the side, torn flesh, the sun, ascended kneeling, making rest, the heart strength sign, whom arise. This word kum right here is the whole basis of this teaching being called Melchizedek rising. This is the word right here that Abba gave to Candace and I, that put that together, was the word kum, which means to arise or risen, or to ascend, in the sense of being down and then ascending to an upright position. Much kind of like Zadik kind of means to be upright, much in the same way, though Zadik is talking more about a behavioral, about a walk. So Arya the lion has long been used in the skies by the ancients. Arya the lion was the banner or the standard of the tribe of Judah. We can see this in Numbers 2, 2-3, 24 and 9, compared with Genesis 37, 9, and 49, 8-12, which I just read some of that. So let's take a moment and break this word Yahudah down a little bit and see if there's some nuggets to meditate on in our walk through the stars. There are 7 men named Yahudah in the Bible, going from the Old Testament or through the Torah and the prophets. The original Yahudah is Jacob's 4th son with Leah, Genesis 29:35. Yahudah becomes prominent when his 3 brothers, Reuben, Shimeon, and Levi, forfeit their places in the hierarchy. Reuben sleeps with Bilhah, Genesis 35:22, and Shimeon and Levi avenge their sister Dinah's rape by killing the entire male population of the village of Shechem and looting the place, Genesis 34:25. It should be noted that the feminine form of this name is Yehudith or Judith, occurs as a generation earlier than Judah and may very well be the original or the meaning that the name Judah is derived from, Judah, and not vice versa. Yehudith is the Hittite aunt of Yahudah, married to Yehudah's uncle Esau. This also implies that the biblical meaning of these names, Judah and Yahudah, may have been imposed upon the existing names, and the spelling of them is altered to fit the meaning. So basically what this is saying, when I was going through the Hebrew lexicon, and I was looking at some different scholars and linguistic scholars, and they were breaking down the Hebrew, because the Hebrew has different forms in which of speech. And so we know it has a male, and then it has a feminine, and then it has a neuter, or like I guess kind of like a neuter, like a general, neither male nor female. And sometimes it has both. It's kind of male and female. I thought it was very interesting when I was going through this, and I was looking at these scholars and what they were writing down about this being a feminine form of the name Judah. And the reason I was, because it took me right back to Virgo, or to Bethula, and it took me back to the male child being born. And that whole thought to me just kind of was like, you know, that kind of makes sense to me, that this name would come forth out of a woman. And so now it might freak you out a little bit, because you're like, well, wait a minute, you know, she was a Hittite, you know. And well, I think it's important that we remember when we're studying the scriptures, that just because somebody's a Hittite, an Amorite, or a Moabite, or what have not, that doesn't necessarily stop them from entering into the kingdom of heaven, because Father opens up the doors. We've seen that with the Moabites. We've seen him do that with every nation on earth, especially now that the Son has come. He's really opened up the door and allowed people from every tribe, every nation, and every tongue to enter into the kingdom and to enter into the fold. And so I think that's a beautiful thing to keep in mind, remembering he doesn't change. So that salvation he offers now, he has offered from the very beginning, and he will offer it up to the very end. And so from the beginning, we see this from the origins of Yahudah, we see in Genesis 26:34 that this name was prophetic in the idea of making bitter and causing grief. Genesis 26:34. And when Esau was 40 years old, he took his wives, Yahudah, the daughter of Badiah, and the Hittite, and Basemath, and the daughter of Elon, the Hittite. And there was a bitterness of spirit to Yitzhak and Rivkah. So they were having a problem with that, and it was trying to tell them something. And I think that scripture, Genesis 26:35 right there, is an important scripture right there. And it's a proof text trying to prove what was going on in the verse before. And now remember, when we're reading the scriptures, we're not reading these things like they were just hanging out and all of a sudden, like Esau married, you know, this woman, and he married this other woman, and like 5 minutes later they're like, oh man, it's a bunch of bitterness. There was a period of time. All of these things were happening over the course of days, years, months, and we have to keep those things in mind when we're reading the scriptures. If we just cram everything together, we really become the former shell of what we were before coming out of Christianity, and we just try to push all the scripture into short little phrases and catchphrases and sheet verses. And that's really not going to be good for sharing and teaching people if we're going to be a priesthood that's going out there and presenting the Gentiles like we were as something that's pleasant before Abiyah. So I wanted to break down the words a little bit, or break down some of what was going on here. The Hittites were from the children of Heth. These were through Canaan. These were Canaanites. It's kind of important right here. Elon, the strong oak, is what that means. Ba'ari means a pit or a well, but it's more translated like a pit. Ba'asmath is a spice. It's the root word possibly of canabasum, or where we get the word cannabis from. I'm sure some of us don't have any issue with that. I have no issue with cannabis. I don't have any. That's why I put this in here. I think that it's clearly seen in the scriptures. These kind of things are clearly seen going back to ancient times. I think what we've done is we've allowed people to take and turn things around into what they were not. But what they were originally meant to be was to help us and to do good for us. So any of you who do the oils, the CBD oils, the hemp oils, I mean, you know, from working with this stuff, especially if you sell any of this stuff and it's legit. I mean, it's real from the cannabis itself, and it's not just some offshoot brand that's been mixed down and diluted down with some kind of carrier oil. I mean, and I think it's kind of interesting that we get this name Judah from this idea of this, because in cannabis is healing properties, and out of Judah comes our king. And so we see the healing that comes from him and the leaf that heals the nation. I'm not saying that's what that leaf is. I'm just saying that this was part of, as I was studying this kind of came out, and I thought I would throw it out there to try to break any ice with anybody who watches this. It just has this whole thing about when it comes to cannabis. Now, I'm not saying, you know, go out and, you know, get stoned and just go party your life away. I'm not saying. I'm saying everybody who's responsible uses things responsibly, whether it's alcohol, whether it's the herbs and things like that. We use these things in a responsible manner so that we're able to use them to produce something good out of us and for the helping of other people. And if you're doing it like that, then I think you're going to be doing it like the priesthood, because I believe that cannabis was a part of the anointing oils that had to do with the temple and the anointing of the priesthood. So 7 men named Yahudah. How significant is this number?
Terry, can I just say something? I think that
Sure.
what you're saying is true, but I think that George Soros and his cronies have perverted the cannabis. So if you are going to do CBD, you have to make sure it's a pure strain.
Yeah.
Not a polluted strain that they're going to use for mind control. And that's why everybody is wanting to legalize the pot, because they've done something to it that's going to like let MK Ultra in. I know some people think I'm crazy, but I truly believe that. Because the enemy always counterfeits who it does.
No, I agree. Absolutely. I think do the very best you can to get as pure a strain as you can get. You know, that's all you can do, is do the best that you can. And not everybody's going to be able to do the very best that they can. I mean, you know, it is kind of what it is out there. But if you can get your hands on something that's pure, and if you're able to reach out to people who are doing those kind of things and utilize that kind of stuff, then I would say grow that stuff yourself. Is, you know, where you are as best you can. You might be going against some of the laws of the land, but you know, I'm going to follow my Father, especially when it comes to healing people. I've seen what it can do for people personally. I've known of people who've had different conditions where their body, you know, through whether it be, I suffered from migraine headaches for many years, and cannabis was the one thing that enabled me, after 5, 6, or 7 days of debilitating migraine headaches. Cannabis was the only thing that helped me to where I could eat, and if I could eat, I could keep my strength up, and it would relax me enough to where eventually, eventually it would take the pain away. And of course, I prayed, and I was a believer back then, a Christian, and I would pray and stuff, and eventually I was healed through a ministry that I went to and saw in Georgia, and but I'll never forget what that did for me. So as soon as I started hearing about, especially these last like 10 years, where everybody was really talking about the cannabis and utilizing it for medicinal purposes and stuff, I mean, I knew in my own personal life that it was a true thing. And so that's why I was bringing that up right there. I think it's important, because what we're looking at when we're looking at the scriptures, you don't even realize, some of us, that it's right there in front of us. I mean, the words are there, but they've taken those words and they've changed those words to sweet cane. You know, oh, it's some, you know, cane that grew in the marshes, you know, off the rivers and the creeks and what have not. And I just don't agree with that. I've watched several people from the Hebrew Institute and people doing archaeology who dug this stuff up. They found this stuff, they tested it, and it was a part of the culture. I mean, it was just a part of the culture. You can't just take the, you know, 40s and 50s and 60s, or I guess it would be like the 40s and 50s, and say, oh, well, they outlawed all that stuff. But we know why they outlawed it. They outlawed it because it was going against what they were trying to do with, you know, alcohol and what they were trying to grow. And so we know the truth. And I think Soros, yes, but I think it goes way back before that, right?
Yeah, it's all the synthetics as well that DuPont was getting ready to release. And cannabis was the biggest problem because you could make everything out of it. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I wasn't trying to make this about that, but I put it in there because I want to be one of those kind of people who, when we talk about things, this is what we talk about. You know, we don't leave things out just because people have a preconceived notion or they have something inside their heart that's making them say, oh, well, you know, I mean, I know there's some people that say, look, you know, that using these kind of things has something to do with paganism. But look, Abba created everything in the beginning. He did that before everything went pagan. He said it was good, and it was very good. And we can't just take every little thing that the enemy has taken and just throw it away because they put something on top of it and went, oh my God, it's pagan. If that was the case, the Dodge vehicle I drive, I mean, it's got a ram on the front of it. I mean, I'd have to go and destroy that thing because I got an idol on the front of it. So I'm not gonna do that. I think I'm mature enough and I've lived long enough in my life to see when something's good and see when it's health and see when it's beneficial. And if I have to choose between that and pharmaceuticals, well, I'm going with the natural stuff. That's where I'm going to go because the pharmaceuticals hurt people. And all it does is it just carries the problem along. It doesn't solve the problem with the people, you know, and it breaks my heart to see people like going through. I have a family member right now who's was going through some chemotherapy and stuff. And she's just made a decision to stop all of that and just have her faith and, you know, kind of go from there, you know, but because using the chemicals, using the pharmaceuticals, it was taking the life out of her. And she would rather go to be with the Father with dignity than to be wrapped up and go to the Father and not even know where she's at. So, you know, I just wanted to kind of bring that in there. I thought it was interesting as I was doing the study that was right in there. I'm not trying to say, you know, like we're opening up a shop or anything like that, you know, here in Texas. But it might be a different case if I was in Colorado. You know.
Hey, Terry.
Sure.
I live here in Canada, and they just made it legal. And we're like total supporters of THC, but we believe that it needs to be done in moderation. But there's so much evidence that it heals cancers, tumors, so many things. The problem is the majority of people that use it, they over-medicate. There's so many scriptures that says, you know, don't drink too much wine, don't eat too much honey, you know, don't eat too much meat. And, you know, people use it as a license to over-medicate, and then then it's no longer effective or of value. But if they use it in very small quantities and use it medicinally, it can have such great healing properties, amazing healing properties. But it does need to be used. And if people are considering using THC, I highly recommend that you get some books and educate yourself and read up about it and how to utilize it in a medicinal way and not in a pleasure way.
Yeah.
And we've prayed about it too, and we have felt that the Father has led us to recommend it to people for all types of issues. And I'm in agreement. If you had a choice between pharmaceutical or THC, we're gonna promote THC over pharmaceuticals any day.
Amen. Exactly. And like I said, it's right here in front of us. And with just a little bit of research, we can see it throughout the scriptures. I mean, and we, not just that, but we see other herbs, other fruits and vegetables that are used throughout the scriptures that are for the healing of the people. And it was just something that he integrated. I mean, he took us out of the earth, and these are things that grow up out of the earth, and it just goes back into us. So, you know, like I said, I'm not promoting go out, you know, and head out to the stoner shop or anything like that. I'm just saying, look, I was doing this study. I was looking at this Hittite. I was looking at this wife, you know, and of Esau. And I was just kind of saying, like, look, when you break this word down right here, this is what this word's trying to say. So it's not something that's hidden when you study anything in the Middle East. You go study the Middle East, and this is very well known to them in their culture. It's only over here for some reason in the Western culture that we just, you know, we have that stigma that goes back over the last couple of generations. where it was taken from them, you know. And it's unfortunate because it put a lot of people into the depression when they were growing hemp and hemp fields and things like that. It has so many different uses, not just the medicinal side of the THC, but even the hemp for the strain, the rope. I mean, that's all through the scriptures. They find that stuff in archaeology. So something that's that good used in the way that it should be to help and promote the healing and the helping of the people, well, then it should be. And so I'm a proponent for it myself. Here in Texas, you know, they're pretty adamant about, you know, it's illegal here in Texas, you know. So we can't really play that game with them down here because they don't really play like that, you know. Anyway, so that was a nice little stop over there in that Canaan Bassam. So I didn't mean to offend anybody. If I did, I'm sorry, but this is how I believe. I think that if we just kind of look at things from I think if we relearn things that we've been lied to about and we utilize them in a proper manner, just like the Mazzaroth I'm doing here, I'm relearning these things and taking away the stigma of the lies that have come to us about these kind of things, which has just been a ploy of Satan to try to stop us from seeing the truth in the end days. So we'll carry on. 7 men named Yahudah. How significant is this number? Well, I don't even think that goes without saying right there. Genesis 49:8, Yahudah, the son of Jacob. After the exile, we have a Levite and Ezra, whose name, a Levite who divorces his foreign wife in the purge of Ezra. If anybody remembers this right here, this is where the Levites were told to divorce and get rid of all their pagan wives. I think that's very prophetic right there in and of itself, being that we have these Levites who were part from Levi, who had a covenant of peace. And so these were priestly in nature and the different aspects of what the Levites did. So I think this is really significant. We had an overseer, Nehemiah. What's Nehemiah? We have the one who rebuilds and it stood as a gap, you know, for Israel and the wall. I thought that was really neat. A Levi who returns was Zerubbabel. I mean, again, if you just look at these names and you go and you look at these scriptures right here, you're going to see each of these times that these priests, these Judas, they're involved in stories that are restoration. These are stories of purge, stories of restoration, stories of purge, stories of restoration. And it's really good stuff. We have a leader, again, in Nehemiah, and a priestly musician, again, in Nehemiah. And I just threw this in there because I thought it was interesting, because I was talking about Judah and I was talking about the lion, and I'm in that constellation right now, Arya or Leo. If you get a chance, go back and look those scriptures up. They're a great little study just by themselves, you know, on a side note. So what's the prophetic word that's being spoken by the scripture we were just reading right here? I'm sorry. Right here, you, Yahudah, your brothers praise you, your hand is on the neck. Your father's children bow down before you. Yahudah is a lion's cub. From the prairie you have gone up, my son. He bowed down, he crouched like a lion, and like an old lion, who does rouse him? I thought that was pretty neat when I started kind of breaking that down a little bit right here. He has praised the lion, who is abiding in the lair, on the side his torn flesh. Think about the spear. Think about him being stabbed. The son who ascended, who kneels, making rest, with a heart of strength who rises. That's literally what that verse was saying right there. That's how that verse is being translated right there. I think if you go in and you take scriptures when you're doing your studies and you break down those words in Hebrew, and when you go in, the Strong's is pretty good, depending on what you're looking at in the Strong's, you know, depending on the lexicon that you're looking at. But I think it's really good, if you have time, to go and research ancient literature that uses these same words in and of itself, just the literature itself, not necessarily within the scriptures or within the Old Testament or within the Torah or the prophets, but there's ancient literature that use these words that are used in the Hebrew. And then when you go, they use them in different aspects. And then when you take those and you apply that kind of stuff to the scriptures, it's almost like you're reading a whole nother book. You know, I mean, he is a young lion, you know, Judah is a young lion. So it says he is praised, a lion who abides in the lair. Well, you know, what lair did he abide in? Well, he abided in the tomb. That's where he abided. That was his place. He was torn on the side where he was stabbed. He was the son who ascended, and he was kneeling. What does kneeling represent in scripture? It means to bring a gift and to bow down before it, to present a gift to. And what did he do? He took his blood up there and presented himself and presented these things before Abba Yah. And he made rest for us in our souls. That's what he told us. Come to me, all you who are weary. I will give you rest. And he was what? The heart of strength. He was the heart of the Father who rose. I just thought that this was a very good thing to kind of look into. Excuse me. An Amber Alert. And so I hope somebody gets something out of that right there. I think that's very prophetic in and of itself as I'm leading up to where we're at. So when it comes to Leo, every year as the winter or the dark months begin to die out and the spring starts to come bringing more light, the constellation Leo, Yahudah, begins to rise in the heavens, chasing the Orion or the hunter Nimrod out of the dark winter of no light and into the springing up of light that brings life to the earth or the land. The hunter will seem to fall as the winter closes and the lion seems to have killed him or chased him into the lower parts of the earth, which is when we say the horizon or everlasting or olam. So when we say olam, that's what we're talking about is a horizon. In Greek, it's prohorizo. It's where we get the idea of a horizon from. And we can't see what's beyond the horizon until we walk and get to that horizon. But it always leaves us another horizon to be looking at. And so when you're looking at the constellations and you're watching them throughout the year and their highest peak points with the sun moving through them or clothing them, lighting them up, this is what it looks like. This is a sign of the great lion or the king who defeats the Babylonian Nimrod or the governments by exposing the darkness. Now, the Orion or the hunter has kind of a dual, has a dual kind of paradox to it. It both is the hunter that is the one who hunts the lion, but it's also the hunter Nimrod in ancient text. We use Nimrod because we're talking about Babylon. They've got different names for him. Nimrod is what I chose because that's how I understand it to be. I think I'll show here in a minute that that's kind of where it comes from in the first place. And so, so we have what looks like when you're watching the heavens, and this is something that I do on almost a daily basis. I have an app on my phone, and my app on my phone tells me when each planet is rising throughout the day. And then it shows me as along the ecliptic line that I showed in one of the previous videos, refer back to them to know what I'm talking about. It shows the constellation rising, each one throughout the day. Shows where they're at during the year, what their strongest suit or their strongest house is, and when the sun sits in each of them. That's where we get the idea of when people are born and they're like, well, I was born in July, so I'm a quote unquote Cancer or a beetle, or that's where they get that from. That's when the sun is in that constellation. So when you were to look up at that constellation during the day, you would see the sun residing inside of that constellation throughout the day, throughout that month. And that's where people get that from. I know some people, I've said before, are a little bit standoffish of that, but you know, even our Messiah was born under a particular sign, and there was a reason and a purpose for it. I just don't think Abba does anything for no reason. However, I do not think that you should take something like that to go and play lottery numbers with, you know, or anything like that. I don't think it should be anything like that. If nothing else, it should lead you back to the Father. And if it doesn't lead you back to the Father, then you need to throw it away. So the lion was the banner or the standard for the tribe of Yahudah, known as the kingly banner. It is used this day as a symbol of kingly authority. Thus, he is the King of kings, for his rule is higher than any other. Where is the king, the lion, the Leo, the star Regulus that represents the royal, or what they call the kingly star? Well, he's up in the heavens. There is no king higher than that one. Thus, he is the King of kings. It's not just an earthly comment that is made of him being on earth and there being he is the King of kings, because when he came here, it didn't look like he was a king. It sure didn't look like it to any of them. As a matter of fact, Judas and all the Iscarians and all them, that's what they were waiting on, was someone to come and conquer and defeat Rome. And he didn't come like that. His time wasn't there to be like that yet, though he is a king. Of course, so every 12 years, Jupiter, which in Hebrew is called Zadik, moves through in conjunctions or comes one with in the sky with Regulus, the royal or the king star. The brightest star in Yahudah, meaning they come together as a super bright blue star. As Ariyah or Leo falls from heaven into the land each autumn, the star touches the land as the king of the royal one has come. Thus, the king righteous, or Melchizedek. I had to take it there because that's exactly what it's showing us each year. And this happens in the autumn. So this happens in all civilizations going back through ancient times. During the end of the summer, coming into autumn, this is the time that they anointed kings. They anointed high people within their governments and stuff because of that star Regulus and its positioning within the heavens. And it was just something they've done for a long time. I'm going to get into that maybe a little bit later in one of the next videos. Ariyah, the young lion in the paleo. Alpha, he's the strong one who teaches. The Rosh, the head, bringing light. The Yad, the strong hand of the house, or the tent in ancient. And Hey, to see, to behold, and to praise. So the lion is the strong one who teaches, the head who brings light. He is the hand of the house, whom we see, we behold, and brings praise. And that's who he is. And isn't the lion known by its head or its mane? Isn't that what it's known as, by its mane? It's how beautiful it is by its head. And it's one. Now, there are different types of lions in the Middle East. I'm referring to a more Africanized kind of lion, which was pretty popular. That's probably what most of you are going to be thinking. But the Barnaby lions, they don't quite have a mane. They have kind of a scraggly looking mane. And next week, we're going to talk about that when it comes to Satan being a lion, seeking whom he may destroy. The spring, or the young lion. Lions in their youth are known for their playfulness and constant curiosity of anything that moves. They are always referred to as pouncing lions because if you have a cat, you know exactly what they're like. They just jump on anything that moves, especially when they're young. Their curiosity is just without them. And that's exactly what Jacob was saying about his son Judah. He was a pouncing lion, a young lion. So every spring, this young lion comes forth. But in ancient times, this is thought in ages, from when they first knew who the lion was. But in the pride of lions, if they're lions, there can only be one kingly lion. So everybody knows what a pride of lions is, right? That's the female lions. Again, going back to the idea of Judith, Yehudith, and Yahudah, and the name Judah coming out of the female. In a pride of lions, you have a pride, which is the females, and usually one male. You may have a couple of younger males, but they'll only be there for so long because that king lion, he will devour, he will kill or run off the other lions until he is challenged by another lion in himself. But the lionesses, they are the pride. And so I thought that that was, interesting in the idea of thinking about it like that. So this is an example of what I was talking about a second ago, where he rises out of the east. All the constellations rise like this. And he rises, and in front of him is Orion, or Nimrod. And in ancient times, they saw a time in which they saw this lion, this great king who was going to come, and he was going to chase off this great hunter who was causing havoc in ancient days. I wanted to throw this in here because I'm talking about springing up, coming forth, lifting up, especially in the springtime or in the beginning of the year and stuff. The samak, the sprout, spring up, being something that comes from the growth, growing, the grown, the spring forward, to sprout, the spring, or to shine forth. So samak is not just used only when speaking about this branch that's going to come out, or this root that's coming. It's used in a lot of, even the word Hebrew in and of itself, when you break down the Hebrew or the word Ibram, it comes from springing forth. A lot of us say, oh, no, it means to cross over. Well, it actually means to spring forth, to spring up and over something is what it really means. And so this goes all the way back to Yahudah, goes all the way back to Ariyah, in the Phoenician language, it was known as posterity. It was known as a royal kind of way. Someone, having that royal atmosphere about them and everything they did. It's used in Isaiah, speaking of future events, which of course leads to who? Well, Yahusha, and talks about him. And here it's also used of the idea of a future ruler when we go and we look at Ecclesiastes and Zechariah. And so I wanted to kind of throw that in there. Like sometimes when we take words and we say, well, we see it right here written in this way. But if you take those words and you study, you got to remember that yes, through the Ruach did he give men to write down the Torah. But he also told us through the prophets that the scribes would do violence to his Torah, not just in the way they acted, but even in the things they wrote. I think something that Tim and Charlene are doing in the covenant, I've seen in some of their videos, where they're actually going in there and showing where people have done violence to the written word. And they've changed the word. They've changed the idea of the moon and the Kodesh and, you know, from the Yorak. And they've made these, they've done violence, and they've given glory and honor to something that was never, it had its own glory in that it was created and set there by the Father, such as the moon, but it was never supposed to be something that was followed in such a way as that it became a God in their life. And they wouldn't do it any other way. And then they lied, and they've got all these people to do it. They added months, they add days, they add to the heavenly cycles, and the heavenly cycles tell us the days. They tell us how many days we have. They tell us our months. They tell us our years. And that's what we have to follow, is those kind of things, which is exactly why we do what we do with the idea of a covenant calendar and following the feast in that pattern. We don't go by Babylonian calendars. We don't go by Gregorian or Julian calendars. We don't utilize those things. We do, like Daniel, because we're in Babylon, but we don't in how we reckon our time as people, because we're in it, but we're not of it. We're on this planet, but we're not of this planet. So we're following the things in heaven, and we're trying to bring them forth on earth. And that was what he wanted us to do. So during the course of the season, spring to summer, Ayah is a dominating sign, culminating in the late summer, and was known as a time to make kings. So there's a lot of history going back, looking at kings, kingdoms, even priestly peoples who brought forth their own high priest that utilized, because there were some cultures that the priests ruled like the kings. And we saw this in recent times. We saw this with what Catholicism did. It became a ruling class, a ruling priesthood over the nations, until it was eventually brought down and defeated and brought down. Even though they still hold a lot of power, there's been a lot of nations that have severed themselves from that. And so they used that time of the year, like I said, when Regulus, this royal star, would come down and touch the earth, there was a lot of feasts and festivals, ordinations, and the like that were done going back as far back as I've been able to read. You just don't see this kind of stuff, and we're not taught these kind of things. So it doesn't. So we were taught that he was born in December, but then when you get to the later autumn months, you get into September, you get into October, you get into these last months. I know I'm using the pagan names, but you get into these last months. This is when we're seeing the feast. This is when we're seeing the trumpets that are blown. We're seeing Yom Kippur. We're seeing the entering of the high priest and the coming out of the high priest. And we're seeing the great feast that he's going to come, the sup, the sup of the Lamb that will come and bring that marriage, and the great 8th day. And I just think it's important that that's not just something that happened only in the Hebrew, because before there were Hebrews, there were other nations out there. The Hebrews do not have the market, cornered on Yah. They just don't have it. That was something that he did at one time, but they don't have it marked, and nor do they call themselves Jews. Do they have the corner market or a monopoly somehow because they come out of Judah and they think they're, Yahudah or Yahudites and, Yahudim or whatever. And so, hey, we're the Jews. And we see that happening all the time. I think that T4 did a great job this last week and the week before kind of exposing that. I love that they're doing that, and we need to continue to do those kind of things. But we should do them with love in our heart, because he as sheep will hear his voice, and we want them to hear his voice. So our Yah is the brightest star, is Regulus. It's the word regal, or ragal in Hebrew. And the Chaldean word for it is foot. So Regulus literally means to tread underfoot, because kings did this to their enemies. The word became associated with royalty. This is a drawing, because I tried to get a picture of the glyph showing the Babylonian and Akkadian. It was a clay tablet, but it's really kind of hard to see. This is where they took it, kind of went over it with a pencil, and then made a copy of it. So even going back to ancient times, they saw the lion. They saw the lion, as I've said in the other videos, showing the serpent standing on the back, as it says in Genesis 49, standing on the back and breaking the back of their prey, which is the serpent. And so they've known these things for a long time. And take notice that they've got the sun right over here. This isn't just any old star right here. This is the sun. In this, when you go and you read the translation, that they're talking about the sun rising and coming through into the king. and the king then defeating this wicked serpent and stuff. So, I mean, this goes back to ancient days, and now we're coming into a time where they're splitting up, they're changing the constellations, and we have to be looking for the Messiah's return. Is it this year? Is it next year? Is it 12 years from now? I mean, I really don't know. But we need to be awake, and we need to be aware, and we don't need to be asleep, because we want to see him when he comes. So, like I said, the ancients, they knew about this when it comes to kings. And we see it even in the Sphinx. And one thing some may not know is the heart of the chest of the lion. It's called Al-Qalb al-Asad, the mighty heart, mighty lion. When you look at the Sphinx right here, and you can look and research this yourself, but this right here is called the heart of the lion. And this is Regulus right here. So they're trying to tell you what they saw and how back they've known this. Now, those of you who are young Earth, you're going to say, well, this is only a couple thousand years old. Others who are going to say old Earth, that they're saying they can date this thing back to 12,500, somewhere between 10,800 to 12,500 years ago. Is what they're saying. Now, I know not everybody believes that way, but I'm open, because I'm not an archaeologist, I'm not a geologist, and I just don't think the Bible's clear enough on whether on the exact age. I think we can read into it a lot and say, well, there's 7 days, 6,000 years. I think we can do that with Peter if we want to. But you know, I just, like I said, I'm a Genesis 1, you know, kind of a pre-earth kind of guy. And so I think there was something prior that was on this world. I think that explains the fall of the angels and the time period for them to fall. I think there was something going back that far, and, you know, they're dating this stuff back that far. And they're dating this back to the idea of what they call the Dryas period, when something fell to earth, they're saying, and caused such a cataclysm that it caused the whole of the earth to be covered in water at one time. And so for those of us who are not young earthers, who believe in an older earth, this kind of fits with where we're at. For me, I look at Revelations. I see where it talks about the great mountain that was cast to the earth. I see that the seed died. I see peoples died. I see animals died. And I think to myself, this great mountain was this Satan who was battling with Michael and the angels, and there was no place found for him anymore. He was cast to the earth. The Messiah said, I saw him and beheld him cast to the earth. Now, you know, that's something I'm going to throw out there. Each of us has to study. I don't think it should, you know, split us in our love for one another or anything like that. But I think it's something to look into. Is it going to happen in the future, a great mountain that's going to fall? Well, Babylon is called a great mountain, a great consuming mountain, you know. And so, and Revelation talks about Babylon. So it could very well be that this hasn't happened. And so it's a future event. And maybe it's not a great mountain that's coming from heaven, like a meteor, or, you know, you see all the movies and all the hype and all the prophetic, quote unquote, channels and things like that. Maybe what it's talking about is metaphorically that Babylon is being cast down as this mighty mountain with the beast and with the whore and stuff. You know, I don't know. For someone like me, it kind of fits in the narrative that maybe when Satan did fall, and he did fall to earth, that it caused such a calamity on the earth that it wiped out a previous civilization or a previous creation or what was creation. I don't know for sure. I mean, I just don't know for sure. But I'm open to the idea, because I think there's some things when you're looking and you're doing these studies and they're finding things, and when you start getting into, you know, megalithic structures and stuff, I mean, I just, you know, when you're looking at this stuff, I'm thinking to it's like such a contrast between a bunch of half-hearted, put together brick buildings and little pyramids and these beautifully cut, just magnificent looking civilizations that they're taking these things and they're finding them 200, 300, 400 foot under the earth. They're digging down that far to some of these things to get to the floors of these things. That's a lot, man. We're talking 30 stories, 35 stories down to some of these, to get to the floor of some of these things. That's a lot of sediment. Could it have been the flood that covered all that? It could have been. You know, I mean, I guess it's possible to deposit that much and then over a couple thousand years. But I thought I would throw it in there. You know, inquiring minds want to know. So many have speculated on the origin of the Messiah and whether or not he came out of Yahudah. The scriptures tell us that he is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Yet it is hard to find the lineage within the written word. Though Matthew 1:1 Revelation 5:5, Hebrews 7:14 are adamant on this subject. It is possible, is it possible there is a hidden mystery on this subject meant only for the diligent, but is there more? So I brought this up before. Yes, there's some scriptures that say specific things about him being from Yahudah. They're pretty adamant about it. Hebrew says it's perfectly clear in the word it used there. It's just kind of like, you should know this. But it's kind of hard when you're looking at the scriptures. I was talking with a brother earlier this week, and we were kind of talking about how, yeah, it is kind of hard, and you got to have your witnesses. And I said, well, man, but I'm looking at the heavens, and I'm seeing things that have happened in the heavens that show something came out of the lion into Virgo. I mean, we've seen it happen. So in our lifetime, we've seen it happen. So we know the heavens are saying something. And it's like, yeah, but it's not exactly written in the scriptures. I'm like, I understand it's not. But John, the very last verse or two of John says that if everything Messiah did was written down in books, there wouldn't be enough in the whole world to contain everything. So I don't know what to do with that. Am I going to be so stringent with, if I don't have 2 or 3 absolutely written down things in a Bible that I'm not even sure has been so tampered with and so screwed up by different sects of Jews and rabbis, and just from the Masonites that we know, from the Masorix that I mean, how bad have they funked up the message? You know what I mean? I mean, how bad has it gotten? I don't know, but I know this, that when I look at the heavens, I trust my Father, and I believe what my Father had to say. Paul came and said that it is evident that the heavens are declaring the wrath of Elohim. I mean, he repeatedly talks about the heavens. Messiah repeatedly talks about the signs. He talks about the signs in the heavens. The whole book of Revelation is an entire book about the heavens. Yes, it talks about what happens on earth, but everything is, I looked up and I saw, and I looked and I beheld, I looked and I beheld. Prophet after prophet, I looked up and I beheld. I was taken up, Paul, whether I was in body or in spirit, I do not know, but I was taken up into this heaven, and I saw things I couldn't even talk about. So that means you couldn't talk about it, so it didn't happen, or it did happen and it was just privy. Like I said last week, did Paul see what John saw?
But let the brother continue with his message, and we've got questions at the end. Let's go into it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Please.
So the heavens are where I'm coming from that's where I'm coming from first and foremost. So we have the heavens showing him a lion, a kingly lion. We have the earth, Yahudah, being called a lion, not once, but twice in one verse. And so we have these witnesses for these things. So the scepter's coming out of it, the kingliness is coming out of that, and the law is coming out from beneath that too. And so I'm just coming from where I'm at, looking at the stars. And as I continue on, we'll get to some of those things that you were bringing up there. So this isn't take this as, if you don't believe it, then something's wrong with you. This is me sharing where I'm at studying, but I can't deny these verses right here. I have to throw the whole New Testament out if I throw away these 3 verses right here. I have to throw it out. I can't just say, well, somebody was lying. Okay, they're lying. So everybody's lying. So I just got to throw it all away. And then at the same time say, yeah, but the scripture says over here. I can't do that. I can't on one hand say no scripture, and then on the other hand say, well, this scripture says. So I have to make a decision, and I have to look and see, like the brother just said, the heavens and the earth will declare something. But see, the Ruach is also a witness inside of our life, and he's going to teach us of all the things that Yahusha taught. Now, not everything Yahusha taught was written down. So there's some things we're going to be taught that we're just not going to see written down. There's going to be a reason why it's hidden. And it's so much hidden that it was hidden that the Messiah was who he was from those principalities, or they wouldn't even crucified him in the first place. So it's not uncommon for him to hide things from everybody else and have his children go search those things out. And that's all I'm trying to do, is to search these things out, present these for people and say, okay. And then if we want to talk afterwards, or the emails, and kind of point some things out, we can. But what I don't want to do is I don't want to get into a disagreement where we fall out of the fellowship. I don't want that to happen, because I believe the heavens speak with the heavens, and there's just nothing we can do about that. And I have a few things that I'm going to show. So this isn't in opposition to anybody. This is where I'm at in the constellation Ariyah. Even the name of itself is called our Yah. Even of itself speaks of Yah in and of itself. So thank you for your input, though, because we should be that way. We should be Berean about things. And I think that's a good way to be. But we should do it in a way to where we can sit down and have those discussions with each other and let the word speak, let the heavens speak, and let the Ruach lead us. So Genesis 49:8, you, Yahudah, your brothers praise you. Your hand is on the neck of your enemies. Your father's children bow down. This is the second witness. So I'm putting second witness here for a reason. Yahudah is a lion's cub. From the prey you have gone up, my son. He bowed down. He crouched like a lion, and like a lion, who does rouse him? A third witness, the proverb of Balaam, Numbers 24:8. All who brought him out of Mitzrayim is for him like the horns of a wild ox. He devours the nations, his enemy, and he breaks their bones, and with his arrows he smites. He bowed down, he laid down like a lion, and like a lion, who would rouse him? So we have a repeat here. Blessed is he who blesses you, and cursed is he who curses you. So these were some scriptures I was bringing out. Hebrews 7:12. For the priesthood being changed, the necessity there takes place a change of law. For he whom of this is said belongs to another tribe, from which no one had attended at the altar of the slaughter place. For it is perfectly clear that our master arose from Yahudah, a tribe about which Moses never spoke of concerning the priesthood. I think this is kind of important right here, where he's saying that Moses never spoke about some of this stuff. And this is a clear still, if another priest arises in the likeness of Melchizedek, who has become, not according to the Torah, a fleshly command, but according to the power of an endless life. See, this is one of those things, as another witness, where they're telling us right here that not everything that's of the fleshly commands, everything that is written down, but something that has to do with the spirit side of things. You know, I mean, it's hard for people to accept the Messiah came. It's hard to accept that he had the power of Elohim in him. He even said of himself, that you see me doing all these works and wonders, and you know the very finger of Elohim's here. You know, that was hard for people to accept that kind of stuff. But he spoke of those kind of things. So I think it's important for us to be open on both sides of that and have that conversation. Even a fifth, Revelation 22:16. I, Yahusha, have sent my messenger to witness to you these last matters in the assemblies. That's us. I am the root and the offspring of David, the bright and morning star. We can go back to Isaiah 11:1 and Isaiah 11:10. This is clearly speaking about who he is, coming from the offspring of David and the bright and morning star. I think it's kind of hard to deny some of these kind of things. So we might not be seeing everything. They clearly felt like there was something to reveal to us. And I don't want to throw out the whole of all the scriptures. I do my very best to sit down and have multiple translations. I have Greek translations. I have Hebrew, Aramaic. You know, I do my very best to have these type of things with me when I'm doing these studies, because I'm trying to bring people into the kingdom. I'm not trying to get them to doubt whether or not he is truly a king. Is he the Lion of the tribe of Judah? Is Revelation lion? Did John not see something? You know, I mean, I don't get it. Or is he trying to tell us something different? So here, I wanted to show y'all. I don't know if anybody y'all heard about this. I know that last year, a lot of us know about what happened with Bethula right here. And we saw last year, Jupiter enter into her, retrograde back into Leo, come back out of Leo into her, enter into her belly, and then be birthed out of her. Is what it was. A wonderful sign. It was a big buzz last year. A lot of people thought, man, that's really like, wow, you know, is this a sign? Is this something? Well, but there was something else that happened 9 months prior to that. So I don't know if any of y'all heard of what they call the conception comet. They kind of dubbed it that. I don't know if it's called Borsanov or Barsanov comet, that happened about 9 months prior to what happened last year in September. And it was really kind of an important thing. And if I can get this to work, I don't know if I can get it to work or not. I got to kind of give me a second here, guys, because I wasn't. There it goes. So let me pause it real quick. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Sorry, guys. Okay, real quick. You see these red marks right here? That, they're not showing it because this is part of Stellarium. And Stellarium is a preset program that they update regularly But you can go into Stellarium, anybody who has it or knows anybody who has it, and if you want to look for something that's not on the norm, then you have to go through and they'll show you planetary movements, comet movements, asteroid showers that happen. We just had an asteroid pass by us here not too long ago that everybody made a big deal about possibly being a spaceship or something like that. I don't know. And that's not really a part of the Stellarium program or any of the astrological programs right now or astronomy programs. So they have to add that stuff in. So when you go into Stellarium, you can actually add in these real-time events. So 9 months prior, just a little over 9 months prior to last year's event, there was a comet that came, and it came, oh, man, for heaven's sake. It came, let's see if I can get this to play. I had it going, what do I do? Well, I'm gonna, give me a second, I'll get it. So what the video is gonna show, and then I'll let it play, is the comet will start back up here. This is a little bit, it goes back. The comet starts and came out of Leo. This comet did. So are these signs, are these things in the heavens that we should be looking for? Well, I think we should look at things when they happen in the heavens. We should consider them. And as this timer goes through, if I can get this to, let's see if I can get this. Might have to, bear with me 1 second, guys. Y'all still see that, I hope. So I'll get it to play. But it came out of Leo and it goes back into her. But the interesting part is when it does, excuse me, guys. The interesting part is when it does come out of Leo, it goes into the belly of Bethula at the same time that Jupiter does. And they dubbed it the conception, there it is. They dubbed it the conception comet because at the same time Jupiter enters into her belly, the comet, they both coincide with each other. They look like one celestial event happen all at once. And then for 9 months, you had Jupiter residing in the belly of Virgo, moving back and forth in retrograde, what they call a retrograde of the planets and stuff. And in doing so, see, they're reversing it. So going forward, now see, the comet came out of Leo right here. This is where it came. Out of Leo. It didn't come from way up here or anything like it. Literally came through when you're looking at Leo, so it looked like it was coming out of Leo. Now, we, of course, know it didn't literally come out, but it came with inside of what they call the Leo constellation. And this comet, I think it's called Borsanov is what it was called, comes out of Leo, enters into her as Jupiter is making his movement, its movement, into her belly. And they come together at the same time into her belly. And then out of her comes the comet, and then Jupiter 9 months later comes out of her last year. And so they called that the conception comet. That's what they dubbed it. They thought it was very interesting how this all kind of played itself out. A lot of people were kind of freaked out over it. Some people didn't even really talk about it. So I don't know if any of you guys even saw it. I would say go on YouTube, go find a site, a planetarium or astronomy site, and just plug in there the conception comet. And you'll have this whole story, this whole write-up about it. And they're going to talk to you about how all of this came together. See the moon come in, you see all these things kind of lined up in and of themselves. It was very interesting. And so the point being that I was wanting to get to a minute ago was out of Judah came this event at the same time as Jupiter was moving into her belly. And so they consider that to be like the seed, the zara, you know, the without getting graphic with it and stuff, and that it was seeding out of Jupiter. See, this is one of those signs that the heavens displayed to us. Now, when you go back and you get on Stellarium and you go back to 5th, 6th, or 7th century, I can't remember. I mean, 5th, 6th, or 7th year, you're going to see a similar event happening. And you go 7 years before that, and there's another event happening that's similar to that in and of itself. But this time it's Jupiter and Venus coming together. And you have a Caesar who was born who thinks the sign is about him. And so it's really interesting that these things are happening. I'm not saying that this was the be-all, end-all of these things. I just think what we're seeing is the secular movement of our faith, and nothing new under the sun happening for us. And I think there's a cyclical time that's coming right now. So Jupiter will not be in that position again for another 12 years. It'll be 12 more years before Jupiter's in this place again. So does that mean anything? Well, I don't know. I think we should keep our eyes and our hearts open and hope for the best. And so this is one of those things, when I see stuff like that, I see the heavens telling me something's coming out of Leo. Jupiter came out, the comet came out, it's coming out. Last year, it went into her, back into Leo, the planet moved. And remember, the planets, these things are for signs. The stars, these planets, they're part of the Mazzaroth. That's where we get that word for. We call it the planet. We say the Mazzaroth, which is the whole overall. The Mazzaroth is talking about the planets in and of itself. And so it moved back and forth between these two. So is this what, when John was in Revelation, and he was talking about the Lion of the tribe of Judah, and he was looking into the heavens, is this what he was talking about, and not necessarily talking about the scriptures? And this is what I was trying to get to a minute ago. Is there a way to look at something and say, hey, he saw something that was being revealed, Galah, it was being revealed to him that had not been revealed, because the mysteries of the Messiah were being revealed to the apostles. One by one, they were getting to see these different things. I think it's something that we should look into. And I think we should keep that conversation open, because there are other things that are starting to happen that we just need to be aware of in this world and outside of this world. Just want to show it one more time. I thought it was really interesting. This is backing up. This is going backwards. You know, see, look, you had Venus, and it did a conjunction with Jupiter. That won't happen again for 12 years since that date, since 2016. You know, I just thought it was very interesting how this happened and how this was coming together. How Venus and Jupiter, they were very bright when all this happened, when they came together. And this is the ecliptic line that we've been talking about in some of the last teachings, that they move on. All these move on and stuff. Again, the comet coming out. You have Venus and you have Jupiter, boom, they conjunction with each other right there. You know, it's pretty amazing stuff, if you ask me. Something to look at, you know. And so Genesis 48:8, it tells us Yahudah was on the neck of the inning. We see this in the heavens clearly. This is what it tells us, that he will tread. He's given us the power to tread on the serpents. We have that power within who we are and through our faith. And we need to keep that going and just keep believing and keep looking, keep reading. I'm not telling you not to look at the Bible. I'm not telling you not to read the Torah, and I'm most definitely not telling you not to read the New Testament. What I'm saying is put all of it together and use the whole counsel together. You know, there's a lot of religions that have taken the Bible and just gone off beat. You know, and how many of us were in something else before we came in this, and we were sure of what we were in, and now we're here and we're sure of this too. We need to be fluid. We need to be open, kind of like what T4 talks about this last Sukkot. We saw a lot of people coming with ideas and like, man, I'm looking at it like this. I'm seeing the earth like that. You know, I'm seeing the dome. You know, I'm seeing the frequencies of music and the language of the people. And I think we need to be open and not be so definite about everything. We have the assurance of our salvation to the end if we make it. And we should have that. We know to be good. We don't need star signs for that. I don't think we even need a Bible to tell us to feed somebody if they're hungry. I mean, for Pete's sake, heathens out there who've never picked up a Bible in their life know when someone's hungry, feed them. Take care of your animal. I think that's written inside of our heart. And see, that's the Torah that we need to be considering, is what's in our heart, what's been written on our mind. You know, that's where we need to be at. You know, that's just, you know, do we do Sabbath and we don't do anything but return to our house on Sabbath? That's a very literal way to do it. Or do we go and we heal on the Sabbath? Like Messiah said, is it okay or not okay to do that on the Sabbath? You listen to some people, they'll be like, it's Sabbath, you go home and you just return to your place and you stay right there. You stay right there. That's what you do. You know, it also says to be prepared and to have your food prepared on the 6th day, right? 6 days you'll do this. And then, you know, it depends on how, you know, Messiah's walking around with the disciples. They're over there rubbing off heads of grain. Why didn't they make themselves a couple of sandwiches before they left to go walking on the Sabbath? I mean, you got to have the heart. You got to have the Torah written on your heart. You got to let the prophet's words through the Ruach speak and be a part of who you are. And we need to be open and fluid to those kind of things so that we can increase our faith and increase the faith of others in this world. We're going to finish up with some of these stars right here in the constellation and see what Abraham was teaching his family. As I showed last week and the week before, especially the week before. Abraham came out of Ur, he came out of the Chaldeans, he came out of the astrology. His father was an idol maker, which means they were into astrology because all their idols were based off the heavens. And so that's what he was a part of. So when he was taken outside by Yahuwah to behold and to look up and to safar, to tell the story, what was he teaching his family about these things? You know, the brightest star is the Regulus, regal. I showed this a minute ago. It's the Hebrew word for foot, so tread underfoot. And this became associated with royalty. And here's a picture taken through a telescope, a high-powered telescope, of the star Regulus. Just a beautiful blue, but really look at that inner circle right there. I mean, it's just kind of an aqua blue right there. You know, this is one of those things where, depending on who you talk to, is how they're going to see things. For me, it's turquoise. You know, I'm seeing Yahudah and turquoise, but I'm seeing these other stones too. I'm kind of seeing it when I'm looking at these colors. That, you know, these colors are in there, but especially that aqua color. Is it exactly right? You know, I don't know, but I'm open. I'm very open to some of these things. And as we go through these constellations, we're going to be looking at some of the major stars in them in correlation to the breastplate of the high priest, or as far as each of the tribes go. The next brightest star is called Al-Galibah in Arabic, or Al-Gabor in the Hebrew, which means the mighty El Man. Isaiah 9, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty El, Al-Gabor, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. It's a dual star system. Now, they could have never seen that from the naked eye, right? But with high-powered telescopes, we can see these kind of things. And so we can see that this isn't just a single, this is a dual-natured star system. Though they're not like right next to each other, they're kind of in a binary orbit and stuff, which is kind of interesting because that's what this mighty El Man means. It means that it literally meant back then, now this thousands of years ago, it meant to have the nature of Elohim and the nature of man wrapped up in one. That's what they call this star, you know. And then you can see right here, 2013, that they were able to get a picture of this thing. And you know, I just think it's interesting that it's two, but it's one. And that's exactly what Messiah was. He came what? In the flesh, but he came and emptied himself out from the heavens. And, you know, Yahuwah said to Yahuwah. You know, so I thought that was really cool. One of the other stars is called Zoma, a star with two names, one in the Greek, the other in Arabic. Zosma, ride the back of the Leo line. A principal's name, by which is listed here, is from the Greek. It means to girdle. Unfortunately, Zosma is a transliteration of the wrong word. The correct one, meaning hip or back, maybe would be better. The alternative name, dur, is more direct and comes from an Arabic phrase that specifically means the lion's back. But in other translations, it can mean the shining forth. The ancient people of Egypt knew these things, and yet they perverted. Remember, I showed you all this a minute ago. They knew these things, and so it's been that way, you know, going back through thousands of years. So even though we see this in Arabic, you know, I mean, honestly, these languages go back even further than just the Arabic language. The Arabs aren't just the people in the regions outside of Egypt, Jordan, and things like that. So we got to be open to be able to look these things up. The lion is presented treading down the serpent. The bird of prey is perched on its back, while below it it's a plump female figure holding out two cups answering to the crater, the cup of wrath. This is in last week's or the week before's teaching, maybe in both of them. I have a picture that I put up of that. The hieroglyphs that we read from the Egyptians reads the Kim and are placed underneath. Kim means he who conquers or is conquered, referring to the victory over the serpent. The woman's name is Harua, great enemy, referring to the great enemy for which are two cups prepared for and intended. This kind of sound familiar as I'm saying these things out. You know, you think Revelation, the cup that the whore was holding, and that she drank with the kings and the people, the merchants of the earth. The Hebrew name of the sign is Aryah, which means the lion. There are 6 Hebrew words for lion, and the one is used of the lion hunting down his prey. The gur, a lion's whelp. So here's a translation of a lion's whelp, gur. This is the same word for a sojourner or a stranger. You hear them say goy, but gur is too. It means the same thing. The cipher, the sephar, a young lion when he's first hunting for himself. I was talking about that a minute ago when they were young and they're leaping and attacking just about anything that moves. The sakal, a mature lion in full strength. The laish, how about that word? Ish right there, a fierce lion. Labia, a lioness. Ariyah, an adult lion, have impaired in search of his prey. You can see some of these things in Nahum 2:12, 2 17, Numbers 23:24. We were just talking about some of the scriptures that was just being brought up. These are some of the scriptures where you can look at different places where the lions are talked about throughout the scripture. The Syriac, Yo, and the Arabic is El Asad. Both mean a lion coming vehemently, leaping forth as a flame. Some of you can remember back here in the last couple of years, we've been dealing with Assad in Syria, and they called him the lion. I don't know if anybody y'all remember that, watching the news or seeing any of the reports about him, but that's how he was being described there in Syria, was as this lion, this tough, fierce lion and what have not. So a little bit right there letting you know that even though this says Arabic, we're talking about Syria, which is north of that, way on the north side of Israel. You know, it's a beautiful constellation of 95 stars, 2 of which are the first magnitude, second, 6th, 3rd, 13th, and 4th magnitude. This is the brightness of the stars as you see in the heavens in their time during the year. The brightest star that's on the ecliptic, on the line that the sun moves on, that the constellations move on, marks the heart of the lion, hence sometimes called by the moderns Corn Leonis, which is where we get Leo from, the heart of the lion. Its ancient name is Regulus, which means treading underfoot. The next star in the tip of the tail is named Danabiola or Danbiola, the judge or Lord who cometh, the star called Al-Gidbah, Arabic, the exaltation, the star called Sosma, shining forth. So I was showing you a minute ago the Sosma. There's kind of some different translations for that Sosma depending on what region that you're in as far as their dialects go. So other stars are named Sarkam in Hebrew, the joining, intimidating, that here is the point where the 2 ends of the zodiacal circle have their joining. Another star has the name of Minkur al-Asad in Arabic, the punishing or the tearing of the lion. Another is Daneb al-Asad, the judge who comes to seize. And another is al-Dafira in Arabic, the enemy who put down. So you see that Daneb, that's real. I mean, it's Daneb or Daneb, you know, where it's talking about this judge who comes. So that's known in the ancient world, even outside of the Hebrews and some of these other Middle Eastern countries, that dang, you know the word Dane, Danites. You go back and think about the Danes, the Vikings, people like that, these northern tribes that were up there in a more recent time in our history, and they came down and just waged just all kinds of havoc and waged lace to the Romans, and they were just a thorn in their side. They really were. Well, you know, doing some studies on going back to Dan, you're going to find that some of these countries, they actually have some books that go back to their great grandfathers and stuff being called Dan. Is that what the Danish are, the Danites? You know, I don't know. Could be. They were on the north side of the campment, Israel. So, and the Danish are in the north. So it's possible. So where does this come from? The perversion of the heavenly scroll. Genesis 10:6. And the sons of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, and Phut, and Canaan, Mizraim being Egypt. And the sons of Cush, Seba, and Havilah, and Sapta, and Ra'amah, and Sapteka, and the sons of Ra'amah, Sheba, and Dedan. And Cush begot Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before Yahuwah. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod the mighty hunter before the Yahuwah. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Koneth in the land of Shinar. This word right here, like some of these words, you know, in more modern times, like Erech, you know, it just takes a little bit of phonetic time and dialect to change that to be Iraq, Iraq. That'd be more like Iraq. And so you do your own study, get out there if you want to look up some of these nations where they're at. It's important. Like Matthew was talking about this last Shabbat. He was naming off some of these countries. And when we're talking about the Valley of Megiddo, and we're looking at Og and Magog, and you know, we need to know where these countries are so we can keep our eyes open for these wars, these battles that are going to happen, because it's going to happen. And all the earth had one language, one speech. And it came to be, as they set out from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar. And they dwelt there. And they said to each other, come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly. And they had bricks for stone, and they had asphalt for mortar. And they said, come, let us build for ourselves a city and a tower Now that word right there, tower, is migdal. It can be a tower. It can be a pyramid. I'm just saying. Whose top is in the heavens, or the shamayim, and make a name or a shem for ourselves, lest we be scattered all over the face of the earth. So here we are. The whole world was one language, right? This before the Hebrews, before we're dealing with the Hebrews in it, you know. So we had one language in the world. So what if it wasn't what we've been programmed to see? What if the Tower of Babel was never built? Not in the sense that we see this pyramid-looking thing that somebody snapped a Kodak picture of, took a drawing. We don't have anything like that. We don't even have anything like that in archaeology. So what if what we think of the Tower of Babel is not what it is? Some of us who are further along than where we're at, we know better. Some people don't. This is all they know. And so when you think about the United Nations, what does their building look? They've got a building that looks just kind of like this, but half built, showing that they're in the process of creating that new world order. It's just nothing new under the sun. It's Babylon all over. In the book of Yashar, 16:11, Melchizedek, king of Yerushalayim, the same was Shem, went out with his men to meet Abram and his people with bread and wine, and they remained together in the valley of Malach, the valley of the king. And Melchizedek blessed Abram, and Abram gave him a tenth of all that he had brought from the spoils of his enemy. For Melchizedek was a priest before Elohim. And so I thought, you know, when we're reading some of these things and we look at that word Jerusalem, and we only see it as Jerusalem, like Shalom, like it's only called Shalom, but it's not. Depending on how you translate that, it's going to be between Shalom, which comes from the Shamayim, because that's where our peace comes from. It's from the heavens and stuff. So it's trying to tell us something, even in the book of Yashar, you know, if you're willing to go and you're willing to look at that kind of stuff. This more accurate about what the Tower of Babel would have looked like. This is the ziggurat that was found in Babylon. It was found in well, this is an artist rendering of it, and the reason they got it painted, I'll show you here in a minute, is because they found a lot of blue paint that was cast onto the stone in and of itself. So they had an artist draw up a rendering of it. So a ziggurat is basically like a pyramid, is what it is. The thing about that was significant about this is this was what they considered to be a temple. And at the very top up there where the blue is, this is where inside here they found all kinds of artifacts and drawings of star images. So this is kind of like a planetarium and observatory for them. And that's what they did. They were making a name for themselves. They couldn't accept who Melchizedek was. They couldn't accept the high priest of Elohim. They weren't going to have anything to do with it. They were going to make a name for themselves. And so for me, you know, my belief is that, you know, the high priest had been walking since Adam on this planet, and the people just rebelled, and they wanted to build for themselves. So was it that he built a tower that went up into the heavens, the clouds? And so we see these pictures and we say, well, you know, we say, oh, look, it went up into the heavens, you know, and it's not the heavens, it's the clouds, man. Did it get that high? I mean, I don't think so. Is that what they were talking about when they said they were going to build for themselves a place? What did they say they were going to do? They were going to build themselves a pyramid or a tower whose top was in the Shamayim, the heavens. That word is Shamayim. What Shamayim? They were going to build a top where they could observe and create their own religion. That's what we're going through right now in this world. People have chosen the pagan ways over the ways of Yahuwah. That's what we are. We're the ones who come in and teach people, hey, there's a better way. Hey, I know you're doing it that way, but this is Abba's way. It's always been Abba's way this way. Don't go that direction. Come with us this direction. Walk with us in this place. And we can show you what he can show you, and the Spirit will guide you in these things. You just need a little bit of prompting to understand these things. So is that what they were doing? They were making a name for themselves, or they were making a shem for themselves? The word is shem there. I'm one of the ones that believe that part of the scribal era is they've taken this word shem to only mean name. It just means name. That's just it. It just means name, but it doesn't, because there's other words for name in the Hebrew. But they've just taken it for that. Like they tried to hide something. I mean, what self-respecting, you know, Judaistic believer wants to talk about a high priest of the Gentiles? I mean, seriously. I mean, we're a chosen people. We're not of the goy, the ger. We're not of them, you know. So when they write things and they translate things, they're not going to translate things like that. You're going to find some in the Talmud a little bit. You're going to find a little bit of writing in some of the old sage writings that talk about Melchizedek. You're not going to find it in most of them, because they have an issue with the idea of a Gentile high priest. They just have a problem with that. You know, it's all things of her own or nothing, man, you know, and that's the way they are. And I don't think you can be that way. I think we live in a different era. We can't be that way. And those Jews who say they are Jews, they are not of Jews. They are of the synagogue of Satan. If they're of the synagogue of Satan, they're going to change everything to point to them and not to the Messiah. So they're going to make a name or a shim for themselves. And isn't that what they're doing right now? They are putting all the temple artifacts together. They're picking out their high priest. They're getting people all involved in Ancestry, you know, whatever that program is, .com, and getting people to come in there. And they've got all these algorithms to see if you've got a certain blood type in you and you fit the Levitical high priest, or I mean the Levitical bloodline. There's like some marker, RH1, you know, and they've got all this going on. So they're trying to build this together. Why? Because they're going to have to appoint them a high priest, a true high priest one day. So is it a name, or is it a high priest that they're looking to appoint? And that's what I think they're trying to do. And I think that's what we're here to do. We're here to expose that kind of stuff. And it's going to be treacherous for us when things get harder for us, our children, or our grandchildren. You know, this is the gates of Ishtar. This came out of the same area as that Babylonian. Notice on this, they were able to reconstruct this with a lot of the brick or the stone that we just read about, where they made their own mud bricks. And they were able to rebuild it. And it had bulls and dragons, bulls and dragons, bulls and dragons, bulls and dragons. This is all astrological or astronomy type symbols or constellations within the heavens. That's what we're looking at on these doors. And that's representing that Ishtar. Why Ishtar? Well, Ishtar, who is Ishtar? Well, it's a goddess. These are the things of the goddess, the fertility goddess. You know who this is when we say Easter, Ishtar. This was a gateway for them. There's always some gateway that enters into the heavens. And a lot of times these were on top of these ziggurats. They had these things up on top of these ziggurats where the priest went in and they performed whatever it is that they were doing, depending on their culture. But here we're talking about Babylon. Notice here, here's a picture. I kind of zoomed in a little bit. Over here on the side, these are palm trees. Kind of look like a column, but they're really palm trees. There's palm trees in the constellations, believe it or not. You see these in Solomon's temple. When he put the columns on front of the temple that he built. You see the different animals, what they call the cherubim or cherubim that they put in there, these winged creatures, these lions in face of a man. Babylonians had the same type of stuff. So these things were seen in the heaven. There's not a coincidence that the Hebrews had it and these other people had it outside of them, and in other cultures had these kind of things. Again, they were just trying to copy what the Father was doing. But the Father used these other to come after them. So here was a tablet that was found not too long ago. It's a little bit highlighted to kind of make it stand out. But they found this tablet right here. And this right here, they believe to be the Tower of Babel. They believe the writing over here, it's written right here. And this is a Akkadian or a Sumerian script, talks about this tower, this Babylonian tower. And there was some more stuff they found, because this is a priest right here. And what you can't see right here, but they have some other tablets. This is a cross that he's holding. It's just hard to see it, but there's some other tablets they have show the priest standing there with the big cross. Very Catholic. Catholics don't corner the market on that area and stuff. I thought that was interesting. Wanted to bring that up. I'm trying to get into the idea of understanding who he is, the Lion of the tribe of Judah. He's Melchizedek. He's the King of Kings. You know, he's higher than all these other things. The heavens declare these things about his son. You know, he tells us, I come down from above. You know, my kingdom is not from here. If my kingdom were here, then my guys would fight. My kingdom's not of here. It's not. His kingdom is from the heavens. So is there somewhere else we can see language as a pointer to Yahuwah? If Yahuwah scattered the speech, then he can only restore it, right? It said that they all spoke one language. There was no other language but the one language. And that he saw what they were doing and scattered them across the face of the earth. So only if Abba is the one who destroyed the language and split the language, only he can restore it. Is this tongues? Are these some of these things we're talking about? Languages? Are we also talking about some other priestly, heavenly languages? You know? I mean, I don't know, but we got Zephaniah 3:9. For then will I turn to the people a pure language, that they may all call upon the name of Yahuwah to serve him with one consent. Now, I have heard this in the Messianic and Judaistic. I have heard it and heard it. This means right here, Terry, that we're all going to speak Hebrew. Really? Is that what it means? You know, that's what it doesn't say. We're going to speak Hebrew. It says we're going to speak a pure language, that we may all, in consent of our own accord, call upon the name of Yahuwah. Or that word right there is Shem, the Shem of Yahuwah. Who, the high priest of Yahuwah? Or just the name in and of itself, the authority of these things, but that it's going to be a pure language that we'll be able to call upon. So it must be Hebrew, right? Well, I'm not an all Hebrews kind of guy. I'm just not going to say that, because before there was Hebrew, there was a language that was spoken, and it was one language, and then he scattered those languages. So if that was the language that was being spoke by everybody, then it had to have been a pure language, because it came from him in the beginning, and then he scattered it. Once he destroyed and scattered the language, then he defiled it. He caused, because of their defilement, he caused them in their languages to be defiled, so they couldn't understand each other. So the root word for the one language is Safar. The word that is used is Safa there in Zephaniah. But the root of that word is Safar, or Echad Safa is what is used. There'll be one language, as the people would be until Babel. So where do we see Safar at? For our last teaching, Genesis 15:5. And he brought him outside and said, look now toward the heavens, Shamayim, and count Safar, the stars, if you were able to count them. And he said to him, so are your seed. And he believed in him, Yahuwah, and he reckoned to him for a righteousness. Really? So he looked up. He taught him how to look at something. We was talking about this, I think not last week, week before last. How long did it take for Abraham to look up? And was he just counting the stars? I mean, is that what Messiah was, or Yahuwah was telling him? Hey, look up in the night sky. There's no lights on the whole earth other than fires and torches and things like that. And I want you to look up in the heavens at night. I want you to look at all these billions of stars, and I want you to start counting them, Abraham. Go for it. And I'll just wait here until you're through counting all of them. Or that word Safar, meaning to separate, to see the story that was written in the stars. And how long did that take Abraham to do that? A year? To see the whole cycle of each of the constellations moving through the Mazzaroth, the zodiac, starting with what? Virgo, Bethula, starting with the king first, maybe? Starting with Leo, kind of where I'm starting at, and working his way, seeing it. And that's what Messiah said. Abraham looked and saw my day and rejoiced in my day. So did he see it because he had a vision, or did he look in the heavens and he saw the story? And then, like I said in the beginning, what did Abraham teach his family? What are we teaching our families? Are we teaching our families the truth, the purity, the pure language that's in the heavens? Can we find it all in the scriptures? Which one? The King James, the NLT, the restored names, the Sefer, the Aleph Tav. I mean, which ones? But as I'm learning to look up, and I'm learning to look at these things and look back in the ancient histories and go back and look at ancient documents. And I'm seeing all these cultures who knew these things. They knew the names of these stars. And in each culture, they had different names for some of these constellations and stars, but they all were pretty much the same. A lion was a lion, a serpent was a serpent, a man was a man, a woman was a woman. I mean, one was giving birth, she was giving birth, and they all meant the same thing. They all meant, how did the Magi know? Well, that's how they knew that kind of stuff, They studied these things. They watched these kind of things. They didn't have modern day TV and the news and what a lot of people like to get into and sit for hours in front of. No, they sat outside with their families and their people, and they looked at these things. And that's what Allah was teaching him, was to go out and look, behold these kind of things. I want you to see these things. And then I want you to tell. And he believed in Yahuwah. He believed what he saw, and he reckoned it to him for righteousness. So did this happen in 5 minutes? I don't think so. Absolutely not. There had to have been a period of time, a couple of months, a year, 2 years, 3 years. I'm not sure exactly how. It doesn't tell us how long. Just told him to do that. And so, like I said earlier, we kind of get into it sometimes where we're like, we squeeze the whole scripture together and it just becomes this one squished together little thing, but it's not. We have to open up and breathe a little bit. Let the word of Yah get into us and meditate upon that word night and day. And then when we speak as Abraham in the morning, in the afternoon, and the evenings when we go to late, we need to be like that. We need to be like David, rise early before the sun comes up. Get our prayers and search these things out. So Genesis 11:5, then Yahuwah came down to see the city. Where did he come down from? This is continuing on from Babylon when they were making the tower, making a name for themselves. Yahuwah came down. Well, we know where he came down from. Where's his throne? It's in the heavens. So guess where I'm looking at? I'm looking up, looking for the throne of my Father. So is the kingdom dwelling in me? Absolutely. I'm of the kingdom. I'm a member of the kingdom, and I walk and dwell in the kingdom, and I walk in an overcoming manner with my Messiah. Though I myself am wretched, and he does not condemn me, because inside of me dwells him, and he's the sinless one inside of me. So it's true that a man can be in him and not sin because he dwells in you. But at the same time, if a man says he doesn't sin, he's lying, because you have your flesh. But we have him to take away that wretchedness. So he comes down from where? His throne, to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. And Yahuwah said, look, they are one people, and they all have one language. And this is what they begin to do. And now they are not going to be withheld from doing whatever they plan to do. Isn't that what we're doing now? Aren't they trying to build rockets and all these satellites and all these things that they're saying they're doing? Come, let us go down there. I added down, but I mean down. You know, let us go there. They was coming down and confuse their language so that they did not understand one another's speech. And Yahuwah scattered them from there over the face of all the land, earth, and they left off the building of the city. You know, so like I said a minute ago, if he scattered them, he confused them, he's the only one who can bring it back. How's he going to bring it back? Through the word that's written on our heart. So we have that promise of Jeremiah 31:31, that he will write that, he'll put it on our heart, write it in our minds, and that we'll be of one accord, and we won't need to teach each other, because we're not teaching, he's given it to us, and we're just all students together trying to be as he is. I mean, that's the truth right there. This is a study that I'm doing. I'm learning as I'm sharing my study, you know, this labor that I'm doing, because I love him, and I want someone to grasp this and not be so dogmatic with the letter of the law and the letters. I want them to know there's a spirit. Before they wrote things down in a book, there was a Shamayim. It was there, you know, and they had to have known these things before it was wrote down, you know. I just want you to think about those kind of things. Do you think that I came to give you peace on earth? I say to you, no, but rather division. For from now on, 5 in one house, the Torah, shall be divided 3 against 2, book of covenant, 2 against 3, book of law. Father shall be divided against son, and son against father, mother against daughter, and daughter against mother, and mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law, and daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. Clearly, from Micah, this is being quoted. I mean, these are all the laws in the book of the law talking about all these things between the sons and the mothers and the fathers, and how you're supposed to, you know. Is that possible? This is what he's talking about right here in one house? Is he talking about the heavens? You know, is he talking about both? And he also said to the crowds, when you see a cloud rising out of the west, immediately you say a storm is coming. And so it is. And when you see the south wind blow, you say there shall be hotter weather. And it is. You hypocrites. You know to discern the face of the heaven and the earth, but how is it you do not know how to discern this time? See, he was trying to tell them, look, man, I came. The Gentiles got it. You didn't get it. But the Gentiles figured out, they know who I am. And what did he do? He ripped the kingdom from them. And he gave it to who? A nation that would produce fruit. You know? So I think that's kind of important. This is in Qasar, Jordan. This is a planetarium, if you want to call it, showing the Mazzaroth, you know, inside of they dug this out and uncovered this in some archaeology. It's just going back showing this is in Jordan, you know, just showing you that it's out there. This is a mural that was found, a mosaic mural that was found on the floor of the synagogue. I mean, the ancients knew these kind of things. They saw all these kind of things. There's nothing new under the sun. Of course, they fixed it up a little bit there, but you know, here's another ceiling showing the different signs being utilized. Instead of a horse, they got a camel. You know, this is again in Qasar, Armah, and Jordan. You know, I just wanted to show some of these things. Like, it's been out there. Like, all these people knew these kind of things, and they waited and stuff, but they all served after food. The animals, the creatures, the people, making images of men and women and creatures out there. And that's what they did. They traded that instead of worshiping the Creator. We worship the Creator. We don't worship the images. We can look at the images in the heaven, like we can look at the Torah, like we can look at the prophets, tablets, and then we can look at the new covenant, and we can discern things through the Spirit to teach us what we need to be like and what we're supposed to share with people. That's what priests do. So this was a drawing from some ancient, Egyptian hieroglyphs. Look, these are all star signs they got in here. Every bit of this is in here. Here's the water bearer, dropping the water out. Here's Taurus, the bull. We'll be bringing that up soon. They've got a falcon here. It's a crow and the Mazzaroth and stuff. They got the woman. Here's Bethula. Look, they even got a cross. This is called the crux or the scepter, is what this was called at one time. Look, here's Leo right here. Man, big deal about Leo right there. And so their serpents, they added some of their hieroglyphs were alligators as opposed to snakes and what have not. And here's a hippo. How about that for, I don't know, a leviathan? I don't know. It just depends on what they wanted to call it. So I just wanted to show y'all some of that. I hope y'all enjoyed tonight. So until next week, Shalom. So we are done, and I'll get out of here and stop the sharing. All right.
No.
Did I retain?